75 to 90% of businesses fail in the first 5 years. That's a really scary number. But the ones that survive and the ones that thrive all have one thing in common. They know how to pivot. My name is Aubrey Schmalle. I am a sensory integrative occupational therapist. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an author. And I'm a speaker. And I'm here today to talk to you about the power of pivots in your business. It's not a matter of if you're going to pivot, it's a matter of when and how often. So today, I'm going to show you how I did it. A little bit about me, just a really quick short resume, is that I have been specializing in sensory integration since 2004. I opened my own practice in Stamford, Connecticut called Sensational Achievements in 2011. And I have since expanded my service to serve public schools, 28 and counting, across the state of Connecticut. I have written 2 books and I have authored 6 continuing education courses for other professionals. Now, I tell you all of these things not to impress you, but to impress upon you the power of pivots in creating a sustainable business. So when I opened my practice, actually right before I opened my practice, there were a lot of shifts in the healthcare ecosystem. So in 2009, we got the HITECH Act, which mandated the shift to electronic medical records. In 2010, the Affordable Care Act came out, and we also mandated coverage for autism in the state of Connecticut for all insurance plans. Then, by 2014, the marketplace was released, and insurances had to figure out how to offer services through that. That significantly changed my business in ways that I could not ever anticipate. Then in 2018, there were some policy guideline shifts in the state of Connecticut for the independent educational evaluations that I offer through my business. And then, as many of you know, 2020 came, COVID hit, and that was a huge disruption to everything and everyone. Now we're 2022 and counting. We have ChatGPT, AI is growing, and businesses are changing. So I opened my business in 2011, and I partnered with a speech and ABA clinic to share treatment space and offer an out-of-network multidisciplinary model with the help of the Community Economic Development Fund and their partnership and loan offerings that they have. So just a plug for you, Fred. It went great. I grew very quickly to having 6 therapists. I started doing independent educational evaluations around the state of Connecticut. I expanded my treatment space after the first year so that I could have more clients. Everything seemed like it was going well, but the people that I shared space with decided that they were going to take advantage of that autism mandate and go in network for behavioral services, shifting to a volume-based business instead of a high-quality, smaller private practice. So then I had to make some decisions. Was I going to go in network with them as an occupational therapy provider, cut my rate to 1/3 of what I was charging for services, and triple my client volume just to stay in business and figure out how to navigate the world of insurance? Or was I going to stay out of network? I chose to stay out of network and focus on providing really high quality specialized services to my clients. We both went a very different direction. We have very different business models. We both pivoted and we're both still in business. So there's not one pivot strategy that works for everyone. It's just really the strategy that works for your business and is in alignment with your mission and your values. So now I had to deal with the marketplace. The best advice that I got in that time was not from my business consultant friend. It was actually from my insurance agent, who knew the insurance environment very well and predicted that the insurance companies were going to drastically shift their model in order to offer services in the marketplace to all of their customers. So he predicted that employer-based health insurances were going to take the biggest hit. All my clients had employer-based health insurances that gave them 80% of out-of-network reimbursement for the treatment that they received from me. So I decided, since I wasn't going in-network, to shift to electronic medical records and try to support them and give them all the resources that they needed to seek reimbursement. It definitely helped for a little while, but we got to summer of 2015 and the bottom dropped out. Out-of-network coverage was completely decimated by the marketplace, and my census was the lowest that it had been in the 4 years that I had my business. But I still had administrative staff, I still had guaranteed hours to some of my therapists, and I needed to make some decisions. So it's really important to watch the changes in the industries that are funnels into your business and the policies that are getting made so that you can make the best decisions possible when you need to pivot. That brings me to my second pivot. I worked together with my therapist in the year leading up to the summer of 2015 to create the Body Activated Learning Framework. That was the package for my intellectual property as a sensory integrative therapist, and it made sensory integration concepts accessible and usable for parents at home and teachers in their classrooms. So I also continued to expand my relationships with school districts in Connecticut, and I did more and more independent evaluations, which served also as a funnel for not just my business, but actually for this new handbook that I had created and the products that came with it. The Body Activated Learning Framework is now a core of pretty much everything that I do. It is embedded in all my recommendations for evaluations. It is embedded in every course that I create, and it's now been repackaged in my latest book that came out in November of 2025. I did re-sign my commercial lease space agreement for another 5 years in 2017, but this time I subletted a lot of the space to the other company that was growing in volume and turned my fixed overhead into rental income. So I continued on this education path and empowering parents and educators and other professionals by starting to speak nationally with a continuing education organization that provided courses for therapists, psychologists, social workers, anybody really in this larger healthcare industry that was in this behavioral and pediatric sector. Now my third pivot. COVID shut down my business overnight. No one was coming to my clinic. I was not getting on a plane and traveling and delivering courses to professionals. I was stuck at home. And nobody wanted to do online occupational therapy services because they were already getting virtual OT and very bad virtual OT from their public school therapists, reliant on the parents on the other side to help facilitate the therapy process, which just didn't work. So I took out all the EIDL loans and the PPP loans and did everything that I could to survive in that space. I also decided that I also was going to show up online and offer free webinars through Facebook, which ended up building a lot of my content on my YouTube channel, my first YouTube channel. And while the in-person continuing education courses pivoted to go online as well, I partnered with a second company who has been very valuable to me in my business, and through them I've actually grown my course content to 6 courses, and I have a national recognition in the world of continuing education for other professionals. So I made it through to the other side of COVID, but I still had to pivot again because the overhead was killing me, and my commercial lease space was going to expire in 2021. So there was a little bit of reprieve on the horizon. My landlord was not working with me for any sort of rent abatement, and now I only had 1 therapist left and no administrative staff after COVID. And she was interested in moving in a different direction with her occupational therapy journey. So I amazingly found a house 3 minutes up the road that was zoned for professional office space. It happened to be owned by a woman that worked at the local special needs preschool, and she chose my letter of appeal and my offer letter among 5 others. So in December of 2021, I shifted my whole clinic to the lower level of my house, and that gave me a lot more flexibility because I didn't have the same overhead. I shifted to having virtual assistants and an online business manager, and now I was in a much better position to focus on the educational and product aspects of my business. So now I have 6 different revenue streams. I have royalties from continuing education, courses that were packaged over COVID and beyond. I have book sales and product sales. I am a certified Tomatis consultant and one of about 5 occupational therapists that specialize in misophonia in the country. So I offer that as a specialized service. I still do independent educational evaluations. I present courses, and I still see clients every day. So that's still a lot of work. I don't have financial freedom. I'm very much tied to my business every single day of the week. And I'm still in my OT box, which is not right now where I want to be. Taxes are still going up, utilities are going up, groceries are going up. There is kind of a ceiling of what you can charge for in-person occupational therapy services based on what the other private clinics are charging, and the fact that I am not an in-network provider. And I need to figure out how to stop trading so many hours for dollars. So I now have 20 years experience in the world of sensory integration, education, working with parents and families, and what I have to offer now in this changing world of AI, I feel like has a significant place in the conversation. So I'm going to reintroduce myself. My name is Aubrey Schmalle. I am a child development specialist with over 20 years experience in sensory integration and learning. I have created courses and I've created books. I teach professionals all over the country, but I still get on the floor every single day to play with children. I go into classrooms and I'm very much connected to the families that are experiencing the way that technology is shifting the development of their children. My research and my experience is not from when I was working in a clinic 5 years ago. It's very in touch with what's happening right now. So I pivoted and I wrote my next book. It's called Uniquely Human: Raising Leaders and Creators in an AI World. It is the new package for my expertise that is now relevant to a general audience of parents, educators, leaders, and people who run organizations that serve children. I have a really unique lens as a sensory integrative therapist because I know a lot about the motor and developmental aspects of learning that psychologists and social workers don't talk about. I also don't just work with typical children, I work with neurodivergent children. And they are a big part of the conversation in integrated classrooms that none of the other voices are talking about. I'm very aware of the diversity of need and the diversity of impact that AI and technology is having on child development and on the relationships that children have with not just their peers, but the adults that are in their lives as well. So my goal is really to teach parents and educators and organizations to rethink the way that they are approaching raising and supporting children, to align better with the way that the brain and the body are designed to learn. So this book has not just the research of the problem, but very practical solutions that families can implement that can also be expanded to educators and larger organizations to make impact every day in real life and in all of their daily routines and actions in and out of the classroom. So I've pivoted a lot in 15 years, and I've learned a lot of things. I know that it's really important to know what's going on around you in the economy, in the policies that are getting made at the state and the federal level, and in the industries that you collaborate with that are part of your business model. It's important to diversify if you can. Don't just have a single offering that could be disrupted by the system or an unexpected event. Package your intellectual property if you can, because then you can move from trading dollars for hours to a scalable business model and resaleable products. Cut your fixed costs and overhead as much as you can. Put a caveat there and say be mindful of your people as you shift towards AI and the impact that it's having there. And own your own platforms as much as you can, because it's good to use Amazon. It's good to use other people's stages to do podcasts and to stand in front of you today, but they own the email lists, they own the customer base. And if you can grow your direct relationships with your customers, then you can sell more in these in-person spaces, which I actually think will be coming back and becoming exponentially important in a service-based business in the future. So, now my ask. My ask is that if you are connected to any of the organizations or the people that would be interested in having me as part of this digital conversation, then please let me know. And if you could, please introduce me. Second, if you are part of those organizations and you're looking for speakers, you're the ones I want to talk to. Or if you know the organizations that are looking for speakers in this arena, please introduce me again. Next, if you're a parent, I have lots of copies of this book. If you know parents, you know educators, you know educators that are parents, and you think that this book might have value for them, please share it. And if you're someone who is interested in this conversation, or maybe works in a different arena that directly affects children in the world of AI, then I would love to collaborate with you, because I'm currently in the process of setting up panel discussions with chambers of commerce, and they're looking for diverse voices. I know that I'm a person of purpose, And I have been saying that since I created the Body Activated Learning Framework. And I'm getting teary because Fred and I had a conversation yesterday. But what I know is that life is full of doors and windows. You have to look for them, and you have to see which one it's time to open. And that is the power of pivots. Thank you. Questions?
I have a lot. Thank you. This is great. You know, it's funny. I'm just like in the throes of writing a paper on the difference between judgment and intuition from an entrepreneur within the scholarly literature of entrepreneurship. And it's fascinating discussion, and it's very interesting to see how the scholars have thought about certain things or have not thought about them. And one area that I wanted to ask you is, like, in the neurodivergent decision-making space, has there been a lot of research done on the dual process theories in cognition, either system 1, system 2, that is sequential, like Kahneman in 2011 in his book Fast and Slow, Thinking Fast and Slow, wrote, or is it like a dual functionality, multi-piston that engages in different ways, like Evans or Stanovich? I guess, is that research? Okay, you know what? I think, no, I'm not sure we're allowed to turn off the fan, honestly. Yeah, but I'll come closer to you and I'll elevate. So I guess the point is, there's a lot of research and cognition on the dual process theories of decision making that talk about where intuition is. Is it in its immediate stage in a system 1 that Kahneman will say, and then system 2 checks system 1, or is it type 1, type 2 that engages like a ad hoc committee based on the task at hand? I was just wondering, when you did research, did you dive into that?
You mean thinking about people who are neurodivergent?
Or like research on neurodivergent?
So I have not come across a lot of research on that as it relates to neurodivergence and neurodivergence in the workplace. But I do think, having worked with many neurodivergent people, that often intuition is lacking because the insight, their ability to have foresight is also very limited. There are many that are still operating in the here and now. There are many people that are still on the non-planned plan, as I would call it, that are, and a lot of the people that I deal with, they don't think forward. They think in the job that they have now to do. I do know that in the ADHD space, which I think would be a very interesting space for you to research a bit further, think of the number of entrepreneurs that have an ADHD diagnosis because they don't fit the traditional classroom model. And in that space, I would say many of the people that I know with ADHD, children and adults, it's that they see more things in the world than everyone else. So they're picking through so much more information that they then have to organize. So people that are very linear are not pulling in all these different pieces of dynamic information. And I think as people with ADHD grow, some of them obviously have kind of a debilitating level of distraction, which they need to figure out how to adjust. But others, it becomes that superpower because they're able to see things that other people don't see. And if that lens can be shaped and they can have a context for it, they actually really can hyper-focus in a particular domain and do very well. But they just might, you know, need a right-hand man as a sidekick for the organizer.
Interesting. Fascinating. I think it's my superpower, my ADHD. And fascinating comment about the lack of intuition on the divergent.
More with, I would say a lot with
A lot
autism,
less,
which
yeah.
keeps growing, yes.
Thank you. Interesting.
Do you work with adopted families, foster families, working with neurodivergent populations in that space, or is this more applicable towards?
I have over the years. It's not a core part of my business, but sometimes I have to work with educational advocates who are advocating for the best interests of children that have been adopted or are in foster families. I work with a family currently where the child has kind of oscillated back and forth between the system and various members of the family and is going through an adoption process. So psychologists send children to me because they know that I'm a trauma-informed therapist as well. Mm-hmm. And that is a really important piece beyond the sensory and the motor elements, is being able to really intuitively connect with children like that and help them feel safe, not just in their bodies, but in the world.
Cool. That wonderful service. Thank you so much.
Congratulations, great presentation. Some of the folks I work with may be interested in what you do, so I'll take some information later on and share it and have them reach out to you. But it's interesting that you know when to pivot. I think a lot of us, when we start something, we tend to think that the road we're going down is the right road, it's the only road, and we're just going to ride or die or something like that. But for you to be able to anticipate, and even when you did not anticipate, when it just came up on you like COVID did, you just had to pivot, and you took a whole lot of pride in doing that. I think that's admirable. So that's one takeaway from me here today. Know when to pivot. Thanks.
Thank you. And I have something to add, actually. You throw out your business plan less than the first year after you write it, right? Because it always goes in a direction that you don't anticipate. But I actually found it very valuable to keep applying for small business grants, as I am currently doing, and down to the last 12 hours of my writing, because it forces you to re-examine your business, what you're doing, and the direction that you're going, and it can be a lot more financially lucrative than just rewriting your business plan to put it back on some file in your computer.
Yeah, recalibration, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure that this is a topic that's covered in your book, but there's been a lot of conversations that I've been in recently talking about workforce development or use of AI and how that changes the workforce, and not so much on the current generation, but when discussing using AI to train the next generation of doctors. And they're like, these doctors are using AI in the clinical space, in their school. The measure of care will change at some point to, you did this yourself, right? To, why didn't you use AI to screen this chest X-ray first? And so the expectation of care is shifting. And so the question goes, so how do we train the next generation of doctors? I don't know that you're going to have an answer for this one in the next, ready to go, but is that touched on in your book of how does this movement of how we evaluate intelligence? Like, I think this is similar to when we went from like an oral to a written culture. I mean, just how we define intelligence is changing.
Yes.
Uh,
So I will say, I will be transparent and say that's not an explicit core of the book. However, the principles of the book definitely still apply. Because one thing I can tell you already that has happened as we've moved towards robotic surgeries even is that there is a significant lack of fine motor skills in the doctor community. Because now all the med students have spent time on the computer and researching and reading and whatnot. And while they've been exposed to virtual science experiments and the technology that is evolving in their industry, you still, at the moment, you still have to use your fingers to control the device, and a lot of them don't know how to do it. And it's not something you would think about reflexively, maybe as a psychologist or someone else that's looking at the workforce, but it's something that I think about because they can't do the job as effectively with the robotic technology that they have now. I think there's a lot that's going to be able to be automated in terms of setting up the surgeries and the accuracy and all of that. But there's still a uniquely human element to being a doctor. And that is part of what I talk about in the book, because you can't replace the interaction that a doctor has with a patient by AI and make them feel safe and secure to get the surgery. And we talk all the time, actually, about the doctors that are out there right now that have no bedside manner, because they get a lot of training in medicine and a lot of training in prescription drugs, but not a lot of training in how to relate to the people that are going through things that are really scary. And I can tell you for sure, this generation coming up, the ones that are in college, the ones that are coming up through elementary, middle, and high school, they are not confident in themselves. They are not competent in a lot of basic human skills for social interaction, because I can hit the Uber Eats button. I can hit the kiosk at McDonald's. I never have to talk to anyone that I don't know if I don't want to. I can just join the groups that I like. And my parents are on their devices working. I'm on my device working. There's not a whole lot of guidance, so the chatbots and AI are looking like great friends. But they'll tell you whatever you want to hear. They're not going to challenge you. They're not going to get mad at you when you deliver them bad news to them or their family. And they're not going to teach you how to be adaptive and resilient as you not only have to communicate what's happening with AI in the way that you're providing care to the people, you're going to have to be exponentially better at emotional intelligence. Whereas before, we used to just say, they're the expert, we're going to trust them. And that blind trust is not there anymore.
When you said research, what type of research what went into the book?
Which research?
Like in the book.
Okay.
In the book that you
Yes.
what type of research did you cultivate? What is the nature of the research?
Sure. So I am not someone who likes to stick in my OT box, as you've probably figured out. So I do not just read occupational therapy journals or psychology journals. I read everything. I read things about the economy. I read a lot about business because I'm an entrepreneur. I educate myself on everything that is going on in the world of AI through all of the AI Economy podcast, the AI Innovation podcast, the limitations in energy that exist. So I keep my finger definitely on the pulse of everything that's kind of being published in all of the popular magazines in a lot of industries. But then I also do do a lot of my clinical research through PubMed, and they, since 2010, have been producing more and more data and research on all different age groups as far as the impact of using technology in various forms on children, on development and education. So all of that is included in my book as well.
Understood. So that's the type. That's the vein that you're in
Yes.
on it. Got it.
And so there is a big, a lot of it is brain-based and neuroscience oriented, and then I pair that with everything that I know today about what's going on.
Yes, that's very fascinating. I'd like to pick up on something that we see, currently related to cell phones being parked in the schools so that the kids are not stimulated by what's on their phone and their apps while they're in the classroom. And I imagine that your audience for your various treatments and even the thought research around what your field is about is considering things like distractions and some of the themes that you brought up in terms of cognition. I'd like your thoughts on that. And then one other theme that's very current is the lawsuits basically around the manipulation of apps that are driven to especially young people to capture their attention and sell various goods and services. And of course, behind that is a massive AI complex that with algorithms and machine learning. So I'm just wondering, as a counterpoint, or in the first case, how to support the educational initiatives possibly around less distraction and support for the cognition mandates that you brought up, Aidan. And then the other part being, what do you think about the way in which policy should be driven potentially in addressing this whole concern about manipulating and selling to people who are, it isn't just minors, we're talking about people that could be 8, 9, 10 years old using their phones. And one last point I'd like to make, because you talked about the keyboard. I think we see right now all you need is a voice. You don't need your fingers. You can speak to your computer, you can speak to your cell phone, right? So people who may have neurodiversity and various kinds of capabilities that were challenged in the past by the keyboard, they can activate a lot of this technology and a lot of this social media. So I'm wondering how what you've been involved with addresses which are some of these currents, because I imagine that there's opportunity here for you to diversify your audience and possibly influence.
Yes, and yes. Which point should I start with first? Okay, so the cell phone initiative is finally starting to grab hold. We're trying to get it passed in Connecticut. We have more and more schools in Connecticut that are moving towards those cell phone bans to create what I call white space for interaction. However, ed tech is not going anywhere.
No.
But ed tech is capturing all the data of all the children. We are using social media as PTOs and PFOs and PTAs to share what we're doing in our schools. We're putting kids online and telling the predators where they hang out, and we don't think about it every day through our own schools. And AI has gotten so good that it needs a corner of a photo to figure out where that photo was taken. So there is a lot of risk in that conversation, just in thinking about not just whether or not we should have cell phones because they disrupt the interaction and create distraction and all these things, but what about everything else that is coming into that child's space and everything that's being given away about those children while they are in school for 6 hours a day? That is a huge piece of conversation. I'm actually part of a larger organization called Screen Free Childhood. Their central discussion actually is around how do I go into the school and say I don't want my child to use technology instead of having more face-to-face learning opportunities with teachers. that does disrupt development. I think we're at a space where the 80s was the last time we revamped the educational system because we decided to have no child left behind. It's time now to do it all over again.
Right. So I use the word distraction. Is it really more of a sensory reorientation that you have to create in that environment where people who are activated by social media and various things on their cell phone have to reorient themselves to the idea of certain cognitive modes of learning and addressing potentially where that individual student is coming from in terms of their orientations in terms of neurodiversity or skills around sensory awareness?
I think there is a distraction aspect. Cell phone or no cell phone, they can still toggle back and forth between the document they're supposed to be writing, looking at the internet and all the million pictures in the rabbit hole that's the internet, and Minecraft, all on the same device, whether they have a cell phone or not. And children, by nature, we build sustained attention over time, but we build it because we're put in situations where we have to grow that ability to sit and think and reason, and creativity is in the white space. If there's no white space, there's no creativity, there's no ability to build a train of thought and reasoning and problem solving, and that is a huge issue because that's going to need to be the core of what you're able to do when you're working in an organization. And to your point about not needing motor skills, I can tell you the brain is built on motor and sensory experiences. The cerebellum, we thought was just a motor organ when I was in college. It is connected to every part of your brain. And it influences your thinking, your reasoning, your adaptability, your emotional regulation. That's why they say go and exercise to help yourself think and feel better and focus. Good dopamine comes from interacting with people. It comes from focusing and achieving a goal. It comes from feeling a sense of accomplishment and self-agency. That's where good dopamine comes from, that leads to adaptability, problem solving, and goal-directed behavior. But if we hijack your dopamine system and we give it quick rewards and we suck you into everything that is going on online and we make it very easy to outsource your brain to technology, then the children will, because it's available, and they are. So even though they don't have to use their fine motor skills, the new problem is they don't have the language and the communication and the knowledge background, because everyone said you don't have to memorize, you could just Google it for the last 10 years. To be able to prompt AI at a 300 level instead of 100 level and be a valuable person in a business.
Yeah, so you're speaking to the developmental elements that are lost, even if they can speak to, the computer or to the cell phone or whatever. Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
So I just walked over from the AI conversation happening at 10 Constitution Plaza. Love how you just talked about relinquishing our attention and capacity to technology. And it's not just, youth. Think about the adults who are now looking at AI and how they should be using it. It's overwhelming. And there's an enormous degree of potential that it poses, and it's very positive about your ability to execute. Yet, we only have so much bandwidth. So it is creating a lot of anxiety. How do you see wellness play into the adoption of AI and other tech?
It's a very good question. So you weren't here for the beginning piece of my talk, but I'm a sensory integrative occupational therapist. And so that is a huge piece of what I do is teaching the ability to self-regulate and how to get there through the way that you're setting up your daily habits and your routines and your space in your environment to create white space versus spaces of distraction to be able to manage that anxiety. but also how we build competence in the spaces where we don't have a lot of skills, specifically in the areas of communicating with people and working collaboratively on teams, where when we've been able to live in our own little bubbles where we could join our own group on Facebook that was exactly like us, and we didn't have to have diverse conversations to come up with solutions to things. So all of those things in the wellness space, people are really focusing on how do I manage all the stress that I have, but it actually is a balance between that self-regulation ability that you have to manage your emotions, manage your anxieties about what's coming, and your competence. The more competence you have in your body, in your mind, the more understanding you have about how the world is working and what is shifting, the easier it is for you to shift out of what I tell kids is their worry brain and into their bravery brain.
That's awesome.